Patriots, what I'm about to show you is terrifying, and the mainstream media won't touch it. 350 FEMA trucks deployed across 6 strategic Michigan counties. A military whistleblower confirming our worst fears. Training exercises involving 30,000 personnel for domestic operations. Patriots, this is not a drill, it's the execution of a plan years in the making. The maps, the corridors, the staging areas, they all align perfectly with classified summer exercises. But here's what should really keep you up at night. Michigan is just the test run. And speaking of protection, let me tell you something that could save your life. With FEMA's concerning activities in Michigan, having evidence of what happens on the road is more critical than ever. That's why you need this military-grade dash cam. Captures everything, records suspicious federal movements, documents potential harassment, and provides irrefutable evidence of any encounter. Visit carvisionx.com and get free express shipping and several bonuses with every order during their current special. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect yourself and your family with the same technology used by law enforcement. Now we've got there's a lot to get into in this segment, so I want you to stay with me, because we've got a lot of dots to connect. I got a concerning phone call today. Apparently somebody watched our report yesterday, and when we presented the maps in that report, you go on the channel, you can watch the report, they jumped off the couch. They jumped off the couch, they made a phone call, they didn't realize that we had a mutual friend, and then I was presented with information. What we disclosed in our report yesterday and the map that we presented, I was told it mirrored the exact military map that they had used during their own military operation. So when you connect the dots, it's all related. So the evidence is here. So FEMA now, and now think about this in the context of the new DOD directive. Think about this in Jeremy Raskin's declaration that he's not going to be certifying the election, calling for civil war conditions. Like, this is the language of the left right now. That DOD directive, remember, it authorizes lethal force. Lethal force. And remember, it also, what just happened with FEMA? Remember? Well, that person at FEMA has now come out. And this is what's shocking. Before I get into the details of this thread that has gone completely viral, we posted it just a couple hours ago. It's already going viral. But I want you to put what I'm about to present to you in the context of everything that's happening now, including this.
So if you turned in reports to your supervisors that state political hostility for the people in the field, those reports exist.
Yes, hence why I also sent you screenshots where they're deleting files now from my computer. So FEMA says they fired me, but I still have access to the systems and their applications. And while I was in an interview yesterday, I noticed that my files were being deleted in my name, and I could not have been doing that while I was talking to Madison. So
this is the woman who was fired because she gave the directive to skip over any household that had a Trump sign in the hurricane response, FEMA's hurricane response. This shows malice and just outright hatred for Donald Trump supporters within FEMA itself. It is systemic. It is ingrained in the organization, and this woman who was fired, she's now basically blowing the whistle on everything that was happening there.
Is very well aware of the incidents that take place, not just with my crew, but with all of the crews in the state that's declared. And instead of just saying, hey, this is how we're going to mitigate it to protect our people, they decided to fire me and make sure Donald Trump knows that they are loyal to him because they fear retribution. The important thing is here, once we start seeing a trend, for example, if they just so happen to have these Trump campaign signs in front of their home, and that's the characteristic that's coming along with that, we have to proceed with precaution. So avoidance first and then de-escalation. And that's the thing. Our superiors know that. We have constant conversations about keep your people safe. If your people are uncomfortable, then just don't go.
So explain this to me, please. Explain this to me. Okay. So I'm just trying to understand what that means. So again, if I'm on a house, if I'm on a street and it has 20 homes and there are 8 homes on that street with Trump signs.
Wow.
And my team has faced hostility from 3 of the homes that have signs. What happens next?
Okay, before she gets to that, there was no reports of any hostility prior to that. None. He's throwing a hypothetical here.
I informed my TFL, my direct report, hey, we're again experiencing hostile encounters. We're moving on to another street. We're not canvassing those homes.
So again, only for go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And that's the directive too. Like honestly, he has called me multiple times and says your job is to keep the team safe.
I'm sorry. When you say he, who's he?
Oh, Chad Hershey.
Okay, who's Chad Hershey?
The TFL my assigned TFL for this deployment.
So Chad Hershey has said, told you what?
That if your team is uncomfortable and they do not feel safe, do not go to those homes. Go and canvass the other homes. Your job is to keep these people safe. They need to be able to go back home safe.
Okay, do you see what just happened here? She just outed her supervisor. So she's basically following orders like a good soldier. She's directing her underlings to skip Trump flagged houses. But the evidence now that she's declaring comes from the top, and it keeps getting higher. Who gave the initial directives for that? Okay, so what I'm about to present to you, these are all very important points that I'm getting to. We have to build the backstory before I reveal what I found out on a phone call today. Okay? Now remember Jeremy Raskin. You've seen this clip, but we have to play it again. Jeremy Raskin, by the way, they just came out and said, "Oh, this is fake." He's got the media running cover for him for his own statements right here. But he said them. And you can't deny it. Oh, this clip's going viral. Well, it's because what you said, Jeremy, is so outrageous. And now he's trying to backpedal somehow. But no, the internet lives forever, and so do your words.
War condition because what can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress. So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025 to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody and civil war conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what's efficient because...
Okay, so civil war conditions, raging Trump mobs because he intends to not certify the election. We have FEMA supervisors pointing out to skip Trump homes for emergencies. So we're building the case that we have already. Okay? And there's more. Let's go to see what Ron Paul had to say here.
Authorized to kill U.S. military now is authorized to kill Americans on U.S. soil. Send in the troops. We need you to shoot a couple of these people.
Yeah.
They're opposing our policies. They're demonstrating against COVID rules or something they'll come up with. So I think it's very, very dangerous, and hopefully people wake up. Maybe people will say, well, this was just a political stunt for the campaign or something like that to act tough. But I tell you what, sometimes they come up and nobody warned us that they were going to do this. It wasn't discussed in the Congress, and it's been sitting there. The main thing that most people should have known about is that you're not supposed to use the federal military to enforce laws.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got the DOD directive, we got Raskin, the Democrat plan to disqualify the Trump victory, Civil War conditions he's declaring. We have FEMA making their declaration, their case known, that they hate Trump supporters. They're willing to go past their homes in an emergency situation. House Speaker Mike Johnson and Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries are at each other's throats over which party can truly be trusted to certify the 2024 election. That's according to Axios. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. Okay? We can come back to Judge Joe Brown in a minute on this because he had some thoughts on that DOD directive. And we have Elijah Schaefer also covering this for Vigilant News. But this is the actual directive. If you haven't seen it, this is the actual directive that has been published by the Department of Defense. Okay? There it is. DOD directive expands domestic military authority to include lethal force. Here it is. Lethal force, including death. Okay? So this is all the backstory for what I'm about to present to you. Okay? FEMA now deploying 350 plus trucks across 6 Michigan counties. The situation just got darker. A member of the United States military has corroborated maps posted online with their own from the operation. It's not speculation. This has now been verified. The FEMA staffer, who was recently fired for advising other workers to avoid houses with Trump signs in Florida, claims that FEMA took the same stance in North Carolina, and she blames the practice on political hostility from Trump supporters. Now let's dive deeper into this thread. 130,000 views on this thread, 425 reposts, going viral. Now the operation was initially classified as top secret, was downgraded to unclassified earlier this year. Conducted in the summer of 2024, the operation wasn't just a drill, it was dissent-related training involving federal agencies. Now these plans are in motion. Our military source revealed that the operation trained over 30,000 individuals nationwide, and its purpose to prepare government forces for the arrest of American citizens and their detention in undisclosed locations. It's not a conspiracy, it is documented. And this is an actual photograph that I got from the Department of Defense. Don't believe me? See if you can see this. You can't. If you go to the thread, click on Alt. It's a really long thread, but if you click on Alt, I made sure that I cited exactly who took the photograph. This one was taken by Specialist Cherish Little of the 326 Mobile Public Affairs Detachment. Now, the counties involved in Michigan, Eaton, Ingham, Ionia, Kent, Livingston, and Macomb, were chosen as part of a nationwide federal corridor. The routes align perfectly with Racine, Wisconsin, and FEMA is now executing a plan drawn directly from the operations maps. Okay, so here is the counties that are in question. Now, the operation was not theoretical. Its maps outline scenarios involving mass arrests, transport routes, and detention zones. FEMA's deployment of trucks and equipment in Michigan mirrors these plans exactly, according to our military source. Now, I had a very long conversation with our source today. And when they saw the map that we presented on our program, when we covered this yesterday, they freaked out because they said it mirrored exactly what their map, their official unclassified map for their operation showed. Now, here's what gets interesting. So as I dug deeper, because I needed to corroborate this story, I'm like, okay, here we have this whistleblower. I got him on the phone. They're explaining these things to me. And I'm like, well, they're like, we can't say this. We can't say that. We can't. I'm like, well, I got to give me something here. Give me something to bite onto. So they threw out some keywords to me. I did some searching. I did some investigating. And lo and behold, I was able to corroborate everything that the whistleblower was saying on the public-facing Department of Defense Public Relations website. Okay? So it happened in the summer of 2024. Training was explicit. The government practiced suppressing dissent. Here's a photograph of that operation. Right there. That's a public relations photograph. Now, again, if you go to the thread, click on Alt, I literally copied from the website the description and put it on this. So the evidence is right there. There can be no argument. The government practiced suppressing dissent. This included the simulated arrest of American citizens who oppose federal policies. FEMA is now implementing the logistical groundwork laid during the exercise. Oscoda, Michigan, a decommissioned airbase, was identified during the operation as a key logistical hub. FEMA has now turned it into a staging area, deploying hundreds of trucks and resources. This is not a disaster prep. It is federal mobilization. This is the decommissioned airfield. Now, this is the map that we presented on the program last night. This is the map that set off our whistleblower who came forward when they saw this. And particularly, what they saw was the arrows going across Lake Michigan. Because on their map, they had the exact same arrows explaining it all. That's what freaked them out. They saw the map. They said, wait a second. So this is, somebody posted this on X. They did their own research, their own work. They drew the connections themselves based on open source intelligence. And they came up with this. And it lined up exactly with the whistleblower's own map. Okay. The operation involved military-grade logistics, including the coordination of routes, detention facilities, and staging points. Our source confirmed that FEMA's actions in Michigan are following the exact blueprint. The maps do not lie. Here's more. This is from that exercise. Military training at Fort McCoy during the summer of 2024 under CSTX, which is a combat support training exercise, further corroborates this U.S. Army Reserve soldiers. They trained for detaining citizens and riot suppression. This ties directly to FEMA's Michigan actions. So this is what they were practicing this summer. CSTX at Fort McCoy, documented with federal photos. These are actual federal Department of Defense photos. Involve scenarios of angry citizens. I mean, that's literally what it says on the caption on the Department of Defense website. Angry citizens and notional riots. The training emphasized preparing soldiers to engage with protesters, mirroring FEMA's mass detainment logistics in Michigan. We've recently exposed FEMA's history of politicizing disaster relief, including directives to avoid homes with Trump flags. What we're seeing now in Michigan is the next step in a much larger plan targeting dissenters. New York Times coming out with this, Trump's false claims about the federal response to Hurricane Helene. And then they had to come out with this. FEMA fires employee for telling Milton relief workers to skip homes with Trump signs. The hostility is baked in. 30,000 personnel participated in the training, according to our source, with the explicit purpose of learning how to detain American citizens during periods of unrest. The coordination between FEMA and other federal agencies is undeniable, my friends. This is real. This is another photograph from that operation. Again, don't believe me? Go to the X thread, see it yourself, click on Alt. You'll see exactly what I pasted from the Department of Defense, their own caption. Now here's where it gets interesting. There's speculation about underground routes and strategic sites like ferry systems. That was one point that was brought up on the phone call. Ferry systems and air bases suggesting further coordination. facilities along Lake Michigan and connected transportation routes were positioned for controlled access during federal mobilizations. Now, this map shows you all of the federal locations around Lake Michigan. These are all federal ports. And quite specifically, the map that we showed you with the arrows going across, and then our whistleblowers map showing the same arrows going across, it lines up with federal ports, federal ferry ports. The staging of 350 trucks is just the beginning. FEMA's deployment involves heavy equipment, supply chains, and transport logistics. These are not the tools of disaster relief. They are the tools of a government preparing for confrontation. Now, this is an artistic representation of those vehicles. The media is responding now. Skoda's Air Base wasn't chosen at random. During the operation, it was identified as a critical hub for detention logistics. FEMA is now using it exactly as planned, turning the site into a central point for their operation in Michigan. Now, this was posted. This is from the Detroit Times, the Detroit News. And of course, they want you to say that they're going to, oh, no. No immediate plans to use a Skoda Wurtsmith Airport as emergency staging area. I wanted to make sure I highlighted those points. No immediate plans to use the airport. And then at the bottom, you can't really see it. It says, oh yeah, there you go. It says, there is no guarantee the site will ever be used. Yeah, a lot of qualifiers there. And then we have this. Local reports claimed Skoda was an unused migrant housing site, but the evidence points to broader federal purposes, including FEMA's deployment of trucks and equipment. The disconnect between federal actions and local oversight raises serious questions. Listen to this local report.
The facility has been in the works for several weeks now. That facility was originally slated as a migrant facility for children and teens who crossed the border without their parents, but no children ever stayed there. Mayor Nancy Vaughn was the one who came up with the idea for FEMA to take over and possibly house Helene victims. But the city says FEMA staff will train and process there. This will include FEMA's teams assisting with recovery efforts across the state. The city of Greensboro says it has no oversight or involvement with the use of this facility.
So, no oversight. Isn't that convenient? CSTX exercises included notional arrests and riots at Fort McCoy, training troops for large-scale detentions. These same tactics are now seen in FEMA's Michigan operations. The overlap between the military and FEMA's plan is undeniable. More Department of Defense public relations photographs. Again, we bring up the map. The proximity of these operations to Lake Michigan and Racine, Wisconsin suggests deeper coordination. Underground routes, waterways, and strategic transport links all point to an overarching plan. This is federal level control at its most alarming. Michigan is a test run. FEMA's operations in these 6 counties are setting the stage for similar actions nationwide. The corridors, staging areas, and equipment are a template for federal control on an unprecedented scale. What you're seeing there on the screen are the counties that have been selected. The Biden administration's silence is deafening. FEMA's actions, shrouded in secrecy, are being carried out with no public accountability. The alignment with the operations maps confirms this is a planned, coordinated effort. The maps show more than routes. They reveal intent. Here's another photograph. FEMA's use of corridors and staging areas mirrors military exercise that trained personnel to suppress dissent and detain citizens. The operation has moved from training to execution. White hats inside the federal government have flagged the operation as alarming. Internal dissent confirms that FEMA isn't acting alone. This is a federal operation designed to centralize control under the pretext of preparation. Every truck, every staging area, every route has been planned for years, and FEMA is not improvising. They're executing a federal strategy. The maps from the operation are a blueprint, and Michigan is the testing ground. And the silence from the mainstream media is, of course, intentional. FEMA's actions in Michigan are happening under the radar while the public is distracted by other narratives. And the truth is in the maps and the corroboration from our military source. Now, Michigan's not the only state involved. Underground systems tied to federal facilities and ferry routes hint at nationwide network for transport and detention. The coordination is extensive and troubling. Again, here is an image of all the federal harbors on the Great Lakes. Now, this is all on my X account. You want to go look at the pictures more in detail. I know this is difficult to see. Just go check it out for yourself. Community leaders and local governments, except one, have remained silent on the scope of federal actions. FEMA's presence has raised local concerns, but the broader implications of these operations remain unaddressed by authorities. Listen.
Services through the airport was just notified that FEMA has chosen the airport facility as a stationing hub for emergency services through FEMA. They will be serving 6 counties in this area, and they will be bringing in some 350 semi-trailers with equipment to park on the base. So if you see a lot of trucks coming into the base, that's what it is. It's nothing to get scared about. They're staging for emergency situations in any of these 6 counties that FEMA takes care of. And the airport was just
emergency. What emergency? What possible emergency could they be preparing for? An inauguration? A revolt when they don't certify an election? I mean, the operation that we just shared with you so far clearly shows that they are training to arrest American citizens, rioters, protesters. Yeah, that's what it is. That's what we're showing. 30,000 government personnel were trained to arrest and detain American citizens. The deployment of resources in Michigan is a direct result of that training. It's not relief, it's preparation for federal control under the guise of an emergency. My goodness. CTX exercises prepared the soldiers for engaging with angry citizens, riot suppression, and notional detentions. FEMA's actions now mirrored this military training exactly. This was never about readiness for natural disasters. A SCOTA initially intended for migrant housing is now being used for federal staging. The sudden shift in purpose, confirmed by our source, proves this operation is about more than disaster relief. It's about controlling dissent. The operation was not a drill. It was a rehearsal. FEMA is using the exact plans, routes, and staging areas from that operation to mobilize now. The deployment of 350 plus trucks in Michigan proves the plan has been activated. Our military source didn't just corroborate the maps, they confirmed the operation's purpose. It's not about saving lives or responding to disasters. It's about federal agencies preparing to suppress dissent and centralize control. Facilities near Lake Michigan are positioned for controlled access, and the corridors tie directly into the broader federal logistics. It's not isolated, it's systemic planning for federal mobilization under emergency pretense. And Michigan's only the beginning. The playbook being used now will expand nationwide if it's not stopped. FEMA's actions are a warning sign of what is to come, and the American people need to wake up before it's too late. The alignment of FEMA's actions with CSTX's military training is no coincidence. This is a coordinated, planned effort to extend federal power. The maps, the movements, and the secrecy all point to a chilling conclusion. Local and federal mismatches in communication are intentional. Ascota and other sites have been reframed as disaster housing or migrant facilities, but the reality is far more concerning. FEMA is preparing for unrest, not relief. Community leaders downplaying the secrecy of operations and the alignment with military exercises are a clear signal that FEMA's actions in Michigan are setting a precedent that this is a test for large-scale federal overreach. Speculation of underground tunnels and hidden logistics is not baseless. Military coordination and strategic site positioning confirm a deeper federal strategy. The corridors in Michigan are part of a nationwide blueprint. The truth is undeniable. FEMA's operation in Michigan is the blueprint for federal overreach. The maps, the corroboration from our military source, the staging of resources all point to one conclusion. This is a coordinated plan for control. And what's happening in Michigan will not stop there. FEMA's actions are testing the limits of federal control under the guise of emergency preparation. The maps and operations confirm this is a trial run for larger action. So share this thread, demand answers. The maps, military corroboration, CSTX training, and FEMA's actions proved it's not speculation, it's happening. Follow for updates as we continue to investigate and uncover the full scope of the operation. The truth will not be silenced. Mindy Robinson commenting on the thread, I still feel like this illegitimate regime is going to pull something so they don't have to relinquish power. I go back to the beginning. I laid the foundation for you. Jeremy Raskin, we're not going to certify. Ron Paul discussing the DOD directive. The FEMA employee who was directed by higher-ups to avoid Trump houses, Trump supporters, shows a systemic hatred for people who love the United States. So, this is all happening. You can investigate the thread yourself. It was a disturbing phone call that I had today. And they don't even know. Mike Johnson, Hakeem Jeffries are at each other's throats over which party can truly be trusted to certify the election. Let's take a look. Let's see what Judge Joe Brown had to say about this.
I want to bring, you got a media that is completely out of control, and instead of trying to implement a free speech situation, they're trying to destroy it. I want to bring something to everybody's attention. It's Department of Defense Directive 5240.01. It was implemented by the Biden-Harris administration September 27th, last month, and it authorizes the U.S. Department of Defense on the authority of a representative no higher in rank than a colonel to use deadly force against American citizens. One of the specific categories that is mentioned is dissent or refusal to accept election results. Now, we had an experiment I've been talking about all around this country, and it started 235 years ago when we adopted our Constitution. 233 years ago, we adopted the Bill of Rights. And we have been progressing, except we've got a party right now that wants to tear all of that down. We hear a candidate talking about they want to get rid of the First Amendment because we need a bureau to deal with controlling misinformation. The Nazi Party started that same identical bureau in 1933. 1934, the Nazis started Strength Through Joy. We have that coming up right now. And it's trying to derail something that is the natural outcome of this experiment we engaged in, which is black, white, brown, red, yellow. We all can come together, and we have a common interest because most humans come from a traditional nuclear family, but somebody wants to tear it down. And when somebody wants to tear it down, that means I don't care what your ethnicity is, you have more in common with every other human being on this planet, especially those who are citizens of the United States of America. We can come together and look at this as an opportunity to assert this coming together. I have talked to young black men, young white men, Asians. I've talked to people from all over this country, around this state, and they're sick and tired of trying to be put in a position where they can be what they were intended to be, rather than what some sick fool says some delusion is entitling you to cop out and not deal with your responsibilities as a human. That's right. So let's build on that and keep these fascists out of office. I will conclude with this. thank you very much for doing what you're doing right here to make America great again, to put it back on track to deal with this great experiment that nobody else in the world has had the opportunity to conduct.
Right.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to go back. I'm going to go back to this point that he made. We got to drive this home.
Now, we have an experiment I've been talking about all around this country, the U.S. Department of Defense, on the authority of a representative no higher in rank than a colonel to use deadly force against American citizens. One of the specific categories that is mentioned is dissent or refusal to accept election results. Now,
there it is. There it is. So the evidence is overwhelming. FEMA's deployment isn't about disaster relief, it's about control. The correlation between these movements and the Department of Defense new directive authorizing force against Americans is impossible to ignore. We're watching the infrastructure for federal overreach being built right before our eyes. So here's what I want you to tell me in the comments. What do you think is the real purpose behind FEMA choosing these specific 6 counties in Michigan? Your insights could help us connect more dots in this developing situation.